The night was cold and quiet. The wind moved through the broken buildings, carrying dust and old metal smells. Once the city was full of bright lights and laughter. Now it was only shadows and silence. The alien war had ended months ago, but peace had not come. The humans won and the aliens lost everything: their homes, their food, and their freedom. In the corner of a half-destroyed house, two small figures sat close together. The older one, Kaelra, held her little sister Lyri in her arms. Lyri's stomach made small, painful growls. She was hungry, too hungry to even cry loudly. Her soft green skin had turned pale, and her silver eyes looked weak and tired. "Kaelra," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm hungry. My belly hurts." Kaelra's heart broke. She pulled her sister closer, wrapping her in the torn blanket she had found days ago. "I know, Lyri, just a little longer, okay? I'll find something tomorrow." But even as she said it, Kaelra's words felt empty. There was no food left in their part of the city. The humans took everything. Every crop, every animal, every drop of clean water, all gone. Aliens like Kaelra and Lyri were left to starve in the ruins. Kaelra looked around the dark room. The walls were cracked, the floor covered in dust. A small candle burned near their feet, their only light. Its flame shook in the cold air, just like her hope. She remembered the time when her mother used to cook warm bread, when Lyri used to laugh and chase the small glowing bugs near the lake. But now their mother was gone. Their father had died in the war, and Kaelra was only 16, trying to be strong for both of them. Outside, a sound echoed. Footsteps. Kaelra's heart raced. She quickly covered Lyri's mouth and listened. The steps were heavy. Human boots, a patrol. She peeked through a hole in the wall. A group of human soldiers walked past, laughing, their flashlights cutting through the dark. She saw them holding food packets, fresh bread, meat, and water bottles. Her stomach tightened. Her hands shook. Just one piece of bread could save Lyri tonight. But she knew what happened to aliens who went near the human camps. Some never came back. Others came back broken, or not at all. Still, Kaelra couldn't stop thinking about the food. She looked at her sister, who had fallen asleep, her tiny arms around Kaelra's waist. "I have to do something," she whispered to herself. "I can't let her die like this." She moved to the window and stared at the distant human base. Its lights glowed against the black sky, bright and cruel. She could see metal towers and watch drones flying above. Somewhere in that place there was food, enough to feed 100 people, but none for them. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them away. "No crying," she told herself. "Not now. Be strong." Kaelra looked back at Lyri one more time. The little girl's face looked peaceful in sleep, though she was too thin, her cheeks sunken. Kaelra gently brushed her hair and kissed her forehead. "I'll be back soon," she whispered. "I promise." She stood up and pulled on her old coat, the same one her mother had given her before the war. It was too big now, torn and dirty, but it made her feel less afraid. She took a deep breath and stepped out into the night. The cold air hit her like knives, and her feet sank into the soft ash that covered the streets. She kept to the shadows, moving quietly between broken walls and burnt vehicles. Her eyes stayed fixed on the human camp lights. As she got closer, she could hear voices. Human laughter, clinking metal, the sound of fire burning. She hid behind a pile of rubble and watched. There they were, the humans. They sat around their fire, eating, drinking, joking. One of them, a tall man with brown hair, looked different. His face wasn't cruel like the others. He seemed quiet, thoughtful. Kaelra watched him carefully, wondering who he was. Then her stomach growled loudly. She froze. One soldier turned his head, shining his light near her hiding place. Her breath caught in her throat. If they found her, she was dead. The soldier moved closer. But before he could see her, someone called out from behind, "Hey, bring more firewood!" The soldier turned back, muttering, and walked away. Kaelra's knees felt weak. She waited a moment, then looked up again. Her heart pounded, but her eyes were full of fire now. She whispered to herself, "For Lyri, I'll do anything." And with that, Kaelra began to crawl toward the human camp, toward danger, hunger, and a choice that would change both their lives forever. The morning light came slowly, painting the ruined city in pale gold. Smoke still rose from the human camp far away, where machines worked day and night. The world that once belonged to the alien people was now full of strange human sounds. Engines, laughter, and the sharp cries of orders. Kaelra crouched behind a wall, her eyes fixed on the human camp. Her heart beat fast and her throat felt dry. She had been awake all night watching the humans, studying their movements. She knew where they kept their food, near the metal tents in the center. She also knew the guards changed every few hours. The place was called the Trade Zone. Humans said it was a fair deal, where aliens could exchange work, metal, or anything valuable for food. But Kaelra knew the truth. The Trade Zone was built on pain and fear. The aliens who went there often gave away more than they wanted, and sometimes never returned. Still, she had no choice. Leary was waiting. Kaelra pulled her coat tighter and stepped out from the ruins. The wind pushed against her as she walked down the broken road toward the camp. Her hands were shaking, but she kept her head low. The closer she got, the more she could hear, people shouting, machines humming, and the smell of cooked food filling the air. It smelled so good that her stomach twisted. At the gate, a tall human guard looked at her and laughed. "Another one," he said. "What do you want, alien?" Kaelra kept her eyes down. "Food," she whispered. The guard smirked. "Food? Then what will you trade?" She had nothing. Her hands were empty. The guard's laughter grew louder. "Nothing to give? Then get lost." Kaelra stood still. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him her sister was dying, that she just needed a little bread. But she knew words wouldn't help. "Not here." As she turned to leave, another voice spoke. A calm, deep voice. "Wait," Kaelra turned. The voice belonged to a man sitting behind a table under a small tent. He wore a clean uniform, different from the others. His eyes were blue, cold, but not cruel. It was Commander Rylan, the same human she had seen last night. The guard straightened immediately. "Commander, she has nothing." Rylan raised his hand. "I said wait." He looked at Kaelra carefully as if trying to read her thoughts. "You want food?" Kaelra nodded slowly. He leaned back in his chair. "Then tell me, what can you offer in return?" Her lips trembled. "I can work, clean, carry things. Anything you need." Rylan studied her for a moment. "What's your name?" "Kaelra. And your age?" 16. He nodded slightly, then pointed to a ration pack on the table. "Eat this first." Kaelra froze. Was it a trick? She looked at him, then at the food, and a small piece of bread, some fruit, and water. Her mouth watered, but she hesitated. Rylan saw her fear. "It's not poisoned," he said quietly. "Eat." Slowly, Kaelra took the food. Her hands shook as she lifted the bread to her lips. The first bite was warm, soft, and it almost made her cry. She chewed slowly, feeling her body wake up again. Rylan watched in silence. When she was done, he spoke again. "You said you can work. Stay here for the day. Help in the storage tent. You'll get more food in the evening." Kaelra looked at him confused. "Why help me?" Rylan didn't answer. He just turned away and began writing something in a notebook. The guard whispered something to another soldier and laughed, but Kaelra ignored them. She followed Rylan's order and walked toward the storage tent. Inside, piles of metal crates filled the room. She began lifting boxes, cleaning tools, doing whatever she could. Her body ached, but she didn't stop. Each second she worked, she thought of Leary's small smile and her promise to come back. Hours passed. As the sun began to fall, Kaelra stepped outside to rest. Her hands were dirty, her back sore, but her heart felt lighter. She had food now, enough to feed her sister for another day. Then she heard two soldiers talking near the fire. "She's brave, that one said. "Pretty too. The commander has an eye for her." The other laughed. "Maybe he'll keep her for himself." "Better than the labs, right?" Kaelra froze. Her stomach turned cold. The labs, she had heard about them. Humans took aliens there for tests. Most never came out. She looked toward Rylan's tent. His shadow moved inside, quiet and still. She didn't know what he truly wanted, kindness or control. But one thing was clear. She couldn't trust anyone. Not yet. As the wind grew colder, Kaelra held the food close to her chest and whispered, "Just one more night. Leary, I'm coming home." She turned and disappeared into the dark streets, the sound of human laughter echoing behind her, and the first spark of danger following close. Night came again, heavy and silent. The stars shone weakly through the clouds of smoke that still hung above the ruined city. Kaelra moved quietly through the shadows, clutching the small bag of food to her chest. Every step was careful. She didn't want to draw the attention of human patrols. She had done it. She had food. Enough to feed Leary for a day, maybe two. Her body ached from the long hours of work in the storage tent, but her heart carried one small flame of hope. She imagined Leary's face lighting up when she saw the bread. That thought kept her going. When Kalra finally reached the old house where they hid, she called softly, "Leary, it's me." A small figure rushed out from the dark corner. "Kalra!" Leary's weak arms wrapped around her sister's waist. Her eyes went wide when Kalra handed her the food. "You got it." "You really did!" Kalra smiled and nodded. "Eat slowly, okay?" As Leary ate, Kalra sat beside her, watching. The sight filled her heart with warmth and pain at the same time. Her sister's joy made her forget just for a moment how much she had to risk for this little meal. But when Leary fell asleep that night, Kalra couldn't rest. Her mind was full of questions, about the humans, about Commander Rylan, about what would happen if she went back. Rylan had helped her, yes. But why? No human had ever shown kindness without a reason. She remembered his blue eyes, calm but unreadable. He had looked at her not like an enemy, but like someone he wanted to understand or use. By morning, Kalra made her choice. She would return to the camp again. Not just for food, but to find out what Rylan truly wanted. The trade zone was busy that day. The sound of engines filled the air as humans moved crates and shouted orders. Kalra walked through the gate with her head low, carrying an empty basket. The same guard from yesterday gave her a smirk but didn't stop her. Maybe Rylan had told them to let her in. When she entered the command tent, Rylan was sitting at his desk again, reading from a glowing tablet. He looked up when she entered. "You came back," he said simply. Kalra nodded. "You said I could work." Rylan studied her for a moment, then pointed to a seat across from him. "Sit," she hesitated. No human had ever asked her to sit before. She slowly lowered herself onto the chair. "You're not like the others," Rylan said after a pause. "Most of your people hide. You walk straight into a human base." Kalra met his gaze. "I came for food, not for trust." Rylan's lips curved slightly. "Fair enough," he leaned forward. "Kalra, I can give you more than food, shelter, protection. But in return, I want something from you." Her body went stiff. "What do you want?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes moved over her tired face, the dirt on her hands, the fear she tried to hide. Then he said quietly, "Information." Kalra frowned. "Information?" "Yes, I need to know where your people are hiding. The survivors. You help me find them, and I'll make sure you and your sister never go hungry again." Her heart dropped. She stared at him in shock. You want me to betray them?" Rylan's voice was calm. "I want to keep order. The humans are building something new here, but not everyone accepts that. Help me and I'll help you." Kalra looked at the floor. Her mind raced. If she refused, he could send her to the labs. If she agreed, she'd become a traitor. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sound of wind moved through the tent, carrying the smell of dust and metal. Finally, Kalra whispered, "I don't know where they are." Rylan studied her face, trying to decide if she was lying. Then he stood and walked around the table until he stood beside her. His voice softened. "You're brave, Kalra. Too brave for someone your age. I respect that." She looked up surprised. He placed a small metal badge on the table, his insignia. "Take this. If any soldier bothers you, show them this mark. It means you work under me now." Kalra stared at it, unsure whether it was a gift or a chain. Before she could answer, Rylan turned away. "Go home, feed your sister. Come back tomorrow. We'll talk more." Kalra picked up the badge with shaking hands. It was heavy, like a piece of her soul. As she walked back through the camp, the humans stared at her differently now. Some with curiosity, some with disgust, and others with quiet envy. She could feel their eyes burning into her back. When she reached the ruins again, Leary ran to her. "You're back!" "Did he hurt you?" Kalra shook her head slowly. "No, he gave me this." She showed the badge. Leary touched it carefully. "What is it?" Kalra didn't answer. Her voice was cold when she finally said, "It's the start of something I can't undo." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and somewhere deep inside her heart, Kalra felt that the deal she had just made was more dangerous than any hunger she had ever known. Morning light slipped through the cracks of the broken roof, painting soft lines across the dusty floor. The world outside was still gray and quiet, but inside the small shelter, something bright had returned. Hope. Leary sat on the floor with a smile on her small face, chewing the last piece of bread Kelra had brought. Her eyes, once dull and weak, now sparkled again. She laughed softly as she spoke. "You're the best sister in the world, Kelra. You always come back." Kelra smiled, but her heart felt heavy. "Of course I come back," she said gently. "I promised I would." But deep inside, guilt burned like a fire she couldn't put out. She had made a deal with a human. She had accepted Ryland's mark, the badge that now hung inside her coat pocket. Every time she felt its weight, she remembered his calm voice. "Help me and I'll protect you. Protect." It sounded kind. But Kelra knew that kindness from humans always came with a price. She looked at Leary, who was humming a small tune their mother used to sing. It was a lullaby about stars and home, about a world that didn't exist anymore. Kelra wished she could believe in it again. When Leary finished eating, she crawled over and rested her head on Kelra's lap. "Tell me a story," she whispered. "One from before the humans came." Kelra brushed her sister's hair gently. Her fingers trembled. "Once," she began, her voice low, "our people could fly." Leary gasped. "Really?" Kelra nodded. "Not with wings. With light. We used to have ships that could cross the stars. Our city towers touched the sky. There were gardens full of glowing flowers and the air smelled sweet, not like smoke." Leary closed her eyes, smiling. "I want to go there." Kelra felt tears sting her eyes. "Me too," she whispered. "Maybe one day." But she knew it was a lie. That world was gone. Later that afternoon, Kelra stood outside looking at the horizon. The human camp smoke rose again, a black scar against the sky. She hated that place, yet she knew she would return. She had to. Ryland had said they would talk more. She didn't know what that meant, but she could not risk angering him. Not when he held her safety and her sister's life in his hands. "Kelra?" Leary's voice called from behind her. Kelra turned. "Are you going out again?" Kelra hesitated, then nodded. "Just for a while. I'll bring back more food." Leary frowned. "The humans scare me." "Don't trust them," Kelra smiled faintly. "I don't." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure if it was true. The path to the trade zone felt longer that day. The roads were filled with smoke and dust, and the air hummed with the sound of human machines. Kelra's steps were slow. Each one carried the weight of a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. When she reached the camp, Ryland was waiting near the gate, speaking to another soldier. His expression was serious, but when he saw her, his eyes softened. "You came back," he said. Kelra nodded. "You told me to." He motioned for her to follow him. They walked past the tents and the fire pits, deeper into the base. Kelra could feel the eyes of other humans on her, cold, judging, cruel. But Ryland's presence beside her kept them silent. He led her into a smaller tent filled with metal boxes and glowing screens. "This," he said, "is where the new order begins. The humans are rebuilding this planet, with or without your people." Kelra looked around, unsure what to say. "Why tell me this?" Ryland studied her. "Because I think you can survive. You're not like the others who hide and wait to die. You adapt," she frowned. "You don't know me." He gave a small smile. "Not yet." Kelra's heart skipped. His tone wasn't threatening, it was something else. Something she couldn't name. Before she could answer, a loud alarm sounded outside. Ryland rushed to the entrance. "Stay here," he ordered. Kelra peeked through the tent flap. In the distance, smoke was rising, not from the humans, but from the mountains. Alien survivors. They were fighting back. A spark of hope lit in her chest. Maybe they weren't all gone after all. When Ryland returned, his face was grim. "Trouble," he said. "Your people attacked a patrol." Kelra's breath caught. He looked at her carefully. "I hope you're not hiding anyone who might bring that trouble here." Her stomach twisted. She thought of Leary, small, fragile, hidden in the ruins. Kelra shook her head. "No one." Ryland's eyes searched hers, but he said nothing. Finally, he handed her another ration pack. "Take this, go home. And be careful, Kelra. Not everyone here will show you mercy." She took the pack and walked away quickly, her heart pounding. That night, Kelra sat beside her sleeping sister, staring at the flickering candlelight. She held the badge in her hand again. It gleamed like a silent warning. Leary moved in her sleep, murmuring softly, "Don't go too far, Kelra." Kelra brushed her hair gently. "I won't," she whispered. But her voice trembled, because deep inside she knew The further she went into the humans' world, the harder it would be to come back. And somewhere in the distance, under the dark sky, the sound of explosions echoed again, a reminder that their world's peace was only an illusion. The next morning came cold and gray. The sun barely broke through the thick clouds hanging above the ruined city. Kelra woke to the sound of distant engines and the hum of human machines. The air smelled of metal and smoke, the scent of control. Leary still slept beside her, her small body curled under the torn blanket. Kelra brushed a hand over her sister's hair and whispered, "Sleep, little one. I'll make sure you're safe." But even as she said it, her heart trembled. She was going back to the human camp again, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. The more she saw, the more she realized something was wrong. The humans were not just rebuilding. They were collecting her kind. She had seen trucks filled with cages last night moving quietly under the cover of darkness. Inside, shapes moved, weak, frightened shapes. They were aliens like her, some barely alive. She needed to know where they were being taken. When Kelra reached the trade zone, it felt different, quieter. The usual shouting and trading were gone. Soldiers stood tense, their hands on their weapons. Rylan was standing near the command tent speaking to two officers. His voice was calm, but his expression was cold and hard. When he noticed Kelra, he waved her over. "You shouldn't have come today," he said quietly. "It's not safe." Kelra's heart pounded. "What's happening?" He looked around before answering. "A transport convoy went missing last night. Some of your people attacked it. The general isn't happy. There'll be searches," Kelra frowned. "Searches? For what?" Rylan hesitated, then said softly, "For survivors. For subjects." "Subjects?" she repeated, confused. Rylan met her eyes. "Kelra, there's something you should understand. The humans aren't just fighting to control your world. They're studying it, and your kind. Your blood, your energy, your differences." Kelra took a step back, her voice breaking. "Studying? You mean he didn't let her finish?" "Experiments. They say it's for science, to learn how your bodies heal, how your minds work. But I've seen what they do in those labs. It's not learning. It's cruelty." Kelra's chest tightened. "Then why don't you stop them?" Rylan's eyes darkened. "Because I can't. Orders come from above. I follow them or I disappear like the others who question them." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind howled through the empty tents. Finally, Rylan said, "You should take your sister and leave this city. It's not safe for either of you anymore." Kelra shook her head. "Leave? Go where?" "The humans are everywhere," he sighed. "Then stay out of sight. Promise me that." Kelra looked at him, searching for truth in his face. "Why do you care what happens to us?" Rylan's jaw tightened. "Because I've seen too many children die already. I don't want yours to be next." Later that day, while Rylan was busy with his soldiers, Kelra slipped away. She followed the sound of the trucks she had seen before. They stopped behind a tall metal fence near the edge of the camp. Kelra crouched low and peered through a crack in the fence. What she saw made her heart stop. Inside were cages, dozens of them. Inside each cage was an alien. Men, women, children, some too weak to move. Machines beeped softly beside them, glowing with strange blue lights. Humans in white coats moved between the cages, writing notes, taking blood. The smell of medicine and fear filled the air. Kelra pressed a hand to her mouth to stop herself from gasping. Her body shook with rage and horror. She whispered, "Monsters, they're monsters." She had thought hunger was the worst pain. But this was worse. Suddenly a voice spoke behind her. "You shouldn't be here." Kelra turned quickly. Rylan stood there, his face shadowed. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew about this." He nodded slowly. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have run straight into danger, like you just did now." Kelra's eyes burned with tears. "They're hurting my people. Children." Rylan's voice dropped. "I know. And that's why I told you to leave." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You can stop this. You command them. You have power." He looked away. "Not enough." Kelra clenched her fists. "Then I'll do it myself." Rylan stared at her, shocked. "Kelra, don't. They'll kill you." She turned her back to him. "Then I'll die trying. Better than living in their cages." That night, Kelra returned to Leary, her face pale, her mind storming with anger. She sat beside her sister, who was drawing small stars on the dusty floor with her finger. "Kaelra, what's wrong?" Leary asked softly. Kaelra took a deep breath and smiled weakly. "Nothing, little star, just... we might have to go soon." "Go? Where?" "Somewhere far away. Somewhere safe." Leary frowned. "But the humans..." Kaelra placed a finger on her lips. "Don't worry about them. Just trust me." She looked out the broken window toward the human camp. Its lights glowed in the distance, cold and bright like sharp knives. Inside, Kaelra made a silent promise. She would not be their victim anymore. Whatever the humans were planning, she would find out. She would stop it. Not just for herself, not just for her sister, but for every voice trapped behind those metal bars, waiting for freedom. The night was darker than usual. No stars shone above the ruined city, only the cold lights from the human camp far away. The air carried the low hum of machines and the sharp smell of burning fuel. Kaelra crouched behind a broken wall, her eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. In her hands, she held a small piece of metal, a stolen access key. She had taken it from Commander Ryland's tent while he was gone earlier that evening. She didn't want to steal from him. He had helped her once. But now she knew the truth. The humans weren't saviors. They were hunters, and their cages were filling too fast. She whispered to herself, "No more waiting. Tonight I free them." Inside the camp, guards moved lazily. The soldiers believed no alien would dare come this close. But Kaelra was no longer afraid. Hunger, loss, and guilt had turned into something stronger. Fire. She moved through the shadows like smoke, silent and fast. Her heart pounded, but her steps never slowed. When she reached the metal fence, she slipped the access key into the lock. The small screen blinked green. Click. The gate opened. Kaelra slipped inside and froze. The cages were there, row after row of them, glowing faintly under white lamps. Inside, dozens of aliens sat or lay weakly on the floor. Their eyes widened when they saw her. "Quiet," Kaelra whispered, pressing a finger to her lips. "I'm here to help." An old alien man near the front shook his head weakly. "They'll come," he warned. Kaelra smiled softly. "Then we'll be gone before they do." She moved to the control panel beside the cages. The system was complicated, full of strange human symbols, but she remembered watching Ryland use one before. Her fingers trembled as she pressed buttons. Then, a loud click echoed through the room. The cage doors began to open one by one. Gasps and whispers filled the air. The captive stepped out slowly, blinking against the light. "You're free," Kaelra said. "Run when I tell you to. Follow me." But before anyone could move, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Loud sirens cut through the silence. Kaelra's heart dropped. No. Human soldiers burst through the doors, shouting orders. "Stop! Stop right there!" Kaelra grabbed a small metal pipe from the ground. "Run!" she screamed. Chaos exploded. The freed aliens scattered in every direction. The humans opened fire, their weapons flashing bright blue. Energy blasts hit the walls, sending sparks through the air. Kaelra ducked behind a metal crate and threw a rock at a nearby light, shattering it. Darkness filled the room. She used it to move, fast, low, unseen. One soldier caught sight of her and raised his weapon. Before he could shoot, someone struck him from behind. The man fell, then Kaelra froze. Ryland stood there, his gun still raised. "Go," he shouted. "Get them out!" Kaelra stared, confused. No time!" "Run, Kaelra!" She didn't ask again. She ran. Outside, the camp was chaos. Alarms wailed. Drones lit up the sky, searching for movement. Kaelra led the group through the side gate, past the old storage tent. She knew a small tunnel near the ruins that could hide them. "Keep moving," she yelled. "Don't stop." Behind them, soldiers shouted and chased. Shots hit the ground near her feet. The air smelled of burning metal. Kaelra turned and swung her pipe at a soldier who got too close. The impact knocked him down. Her arms ached, but she didn't care. She couldn't stop. Not now. When they finally reached the outer wall, Kaelra pushed open a small service door. "In here!" The survivors crawled through one by one, disappearing into the dark tunnel. Kaelra looked back. Ryland was running toward her. "Go!" He shouted again, but then an explosion ripped through the camp. Fire filled the sky. The shockwave threw Kaelra to the ground. She coughed, her ears ringing. Through the smoke, she saw Ryland stagger and fall. "Ryland," she cried. He looked at her, blood running down his face. "Don't stop. Save your sister." Then the fire swallowed him. Kyelra screamed, but the sound was lost in the chaos. Tears burned her eyes as she crawled to the tunnel entrance. She looked one last time at the burning camp, then slipped inside and pulled the door shut behind her. The tunnel was long and cold. The air smelled of dust and earth. The other aliens moved silently, their faces pale and fearful. Kelra's mind was spinning. Rylan had helped her, even when he didn't have to. She didn't understand why. But now, he was gone. When the tunnel finally opened into the mountains, cold wind hit her face. She looked up. The night sky stretched above her, wide and endless. Far below, the human camp still burned. Kelra turned to the survivors. "Keep going north," she said. "There's a cave system beyond the ridge. We'll be safe there." An old alien woman placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "You saved us," she whispered. Kelra shook her head. "Not yet. I have someone left to save." She looked back toward the city, where Leary waited, alone and unaware of the danger coming. Kelra took one last breath of the cold mountain air. "Hold on, little star," she whispered. "I'm coming for you," and with fire in her eyes. She ran back into the night, toward the ruins, toward her sister, and toward the fight that would decide both their futures. Snow had started to fall again, soft and quiet, covering the black ruins of the old alien city. The world seemed calm now, but Kelra knew better. Beneath the silence, the earth still remembered screams, fire, and war. She walked slowly through the empty streets, her cloak wrapped tightly around her thin body. Every step crunched on the frozen ground. In her hand, she held a small silver badge, the human insignia that once belonged to Commander Rylan. It was burned and broken, yet she couldn't throw it away. Rylan had died saving her and her people. He was human, but not like the others. Somewhere deep in her heart, Kelra believed there had been light in him, a light that didn't belong to the world of soldiers in cages. But now, that light was gone. She reached the door of the old building where she and Leary used to hide. Her heart pounded as she pushed it open. Inside, the candle still burned weakly, a tiny trembling flame in the dark. And beside it, curled up in a blanket, was Leary. Kelra dropped to her knees. "Leary!" The little girl's eyes opened slowly. "Kelra?" Kelra pulled her into her arms. "I'm here, little star. I'm here." Leary hugged her tightly, her voice weak but full of joy. "I knew you'd come back." Kelra smiled, tears filling her eyes. "I promised I would, didn't I?" Leary nodded against her chest. "I wasn't scared." "Not really." Kelra laughed softly through her tears. "You're braver than me." For a long time, they just stayed like that, two sisters holding each other in a world that had forgotten love. Later that night, Kelra sat by the candle, watching the flame dance. Leary slept peacefully beside her. Outside, the wind howled, but inside it was quiet. Kelra took out Rylan's badge and turned it in her hand. The metal reflected the candlelight, broken but still shining. "You kept your word," she whispered to the empty air. "You said you'd keep us safe." She placed the badge near the candle. Its light flickered over the human mark, once a symbol of control, now a symbol of sacrifice. Her thoughts drifted to the mountains, to the freed aliens she had helped escape. They would rebuild. Maybe not today, maybe not soon, but one day. She had seen the strength in their eyes as they vanished into the snow. The spark of life had returned to them. The same spark that once lived in her people's cities, in their songs, in their skies. She remembered what her mother used to say. Even the smallest flame can guide you through the darkest night. Kelra looked at Leary's sleeping face. Peaceful, innocent, untouched by the world's cruelty. And she understood. That was the flame she had been fighting for all along. Not revenge, not pride. Hope. The next morning, the sisters left the ruins behind. Kelra carried a small bag on her back, filled with food and water she had taken from the human camp before the fire. Leary walked beside her, holding her hand tightly. "Where are we going?" Leary asked, her voice light and curious. Kelra looked at the horizon where the sun was beginning to rise. "To the mountains," she said. "There are others there. Our people. We'll be safe," Leary smiled. "Will there be stars?" Kelra smiled back. More than you can count. They walked for hours through snow and wind until the city disappeared behind them. The air grew cleaner, the sky brighter. For the first time in years, Kaelra felt something she had almost forgotten: peace. But as they walked, she noticed something strange in the sky. Far away, a human ship was rising, leaving the planet. Its engines glowed blue against the clouds. Lyri pointed. Are they going home? Kaelra watched quietly. Maybe. Or maybe they're running from what they did. Lyri squeezed her hand. Do you hate them? Kaelra was silent for a long moment. The question hung in the cold air like snowflakes. Finally, she said softly, No, not all of them. One of them saved us. She looked down at her sister. Remember that, Lyri. Not everyone who hurts us is a monster, and not everyone who helps us is perfect. But sometimes, even in the darkest place, a little light can still shine. Lyri smiled and nodded. Like our candle? Kaelra smiled back. Exactly like that. By nightfall, they reached the first mountain ridge. The air was thin and sharp, but the view took their breath away. Below them, the world stretched endlessly. Rivers of silver, forests of ice, and the faint glow of alien lights in the distance. Our people? Lyri whispered. Kaelra nodded. Yes, we're going home. They built a small fire near the rocks. The flames danced high, warm and alive. Kaelra took Ryland's broken badge and placed it beside the fire. It gleamed softly, catching the light one last time. For a moment, it looked almost like a star fallen to the earth. Kaelra whispered, Thank you. The fire crackled. The wind carried her words away into the sky. Lyri leaned against her sister's shoulder. What will we do now? Kaelra looked at the stars above them, brighter than they had ever seemed before. We live, she said simply. We rebuild, and we make sure no one ever forgets what happened here. She reached out and held Lyri's hand. Together they watched the sky, two small figures under a universe full of light. And as the first rays of dawn touched their faces, Kaelra closed her eyes and smiled. Because for the first time in forever, the world didn't feel broken anymore. It felt alive. It felt like hope. It felt like the last light.